I got my Sega Genesis for Christmas in 1989, mere months after its North American launch. My mom couldn't get me much during the year, but she made good when the holidays rolled around and made sure I had something I really wanted. The early days of owning the console was mostly filled with rentals and borrowing games from the few friends that also had the unit, but I don't mind telling you it was slim pickings that early in the console's life. In between the greats like Revenge of Shinobi and Ghouls and Ghosts, I was often looking for something new, and the decent stuff often came from completely out of left field. And that was certainly the case with the Sega-developed Rambo III. I had been a Stallone fan as far back as the Rocky movies, and I can still remember being just 8 years old when I first saw First Blood on HBO. Action movies had been a big thrill to me as a youngster, but I had found video games based on films were often less than stellar. But I had needed something to play, and the screens on the back of the box looked fantastic. Sega had also done a great job with Rambo First Blood Part 2 on the Master System, so there was precedent there for quality. I went in expecting the worst and hoping for the best. Was it any good? Let's find out. The story of Rambo III follows the film pretty closely. The opening cinematic shows Colonel Troutman's Jeep being run down by a Russian helicopter and being captured. That triggers a visit to John Rambo, informing him that his former mentor needs help and only you can get the job done. From there, you are playing a top-down run and gun with exploration elements. As Rambo, you have access to a handful of weapons to take down the Russians and free your friend. By default, you are armed with a machine gun with unlimited ammunition. This is your main form of attack and the one you'll use the most throughout your mission. You also have a knife for up-close and personal attacks. Again, this is an unlimited attack and you can do it as much as you like. Rambo also has explosive arrows that do massive damage. The power of these arrows is determined by how long you charge the shot before letting it fly. Unfortunately, these arrows have an ammunition counter, but you can also find more in the field. There are also time bombs you can set on a delayed fuse to destroy stationary munitions and soldiers. Each bomb has a 5-second timer, so you can set it and then get away. You'll notice as you explore the battlefield you run across icons labeled A and B. A is more ammo for your arrows and B is more ammo for your time bombs. Should you find a smiley face, those are your extra lives. Rambo 3 has just 6 stages and the objective is always pretty simple. In Stage 1, you just assault the enemy's front line and infiltrate their area. In Stage 2, you must find the secret agent and escape the prison. In Stage 3, you must fight your way to where the enemy stores all its weapons. In Stage 4, you must search out those weapons and destroy them. Stage 5, you assault the enemy's main base. And in the 6th and final area, you rescue your friend and get the hell back home. The stages are all fairly simple in their layout, but most do have a maze-like exploration quality that forces you to search for what you're looking for. This isn't just about running left or right until you get to your target. Most stages also end in a boss fight that switches the game into a third-person shooting gallery where you must face tanks and helicopters. These areas provide you with cover while you fight, and you use your explosive arrows to take down the enemy. Rambo 3 does have a continue system that lets you use it all the way up until the 6th and final stage. Should you die there, however, it's a permanent game over. There is also a 2-player option, but it's alternating and not at the same time. On the plus side, if you do have a second controller plugged in, the first pad can be used for both players. Rambo 3 came on a tiny 2 megabit cartridge, small even by early Genesis standards. Games like Revenge of Shinobi, Golden Axe, and Altered Beast were 4 megabits, and a few like Ghouls and Ghosts and Phantasy Star 2 were even larger. This translates into Rambo 3 being a rather simple looking adventure. The enemies and vehicles are detailed enough, but most of the environments are pretty drab looking. There really are no great moments of special effects or set pieces that really make each stage special. In fact, the tile set for each area pretty much repeats the entire way with little in the way of variety. Without a doubt, the highlight of this game's visuals are the boss encounters. When the action switches to the third person, all of a sudden you are greeted with multiple layers of parallax scrolling, a huge and detailed character sprite, and massive vehicles for you to destroy. It kinda makes you wish that Sega had made these areas larger with more enemies, because they certainly look nice. For what it's worth, I never considered Rambo 3 a bad looking game. It's just a bit plain when considered against the better looking software at the time. It gets the job done, but it definitely had room for loads of improvement. That 2 megabit cart size is likely to blame for the rather middling soundtrack as well. Nothing here is bad, but there's not a lot to it. Mission 1 is the only stage in the game that has its own music, and that's super short. Mission 2 shares its music with Mission 6 and Mission 4, and both Mission 3 and Mission 5 share the same background tunes. There's a boss track that is shared among every boss fight, and an ending melody. And that's it. Essentially giving you 5 songs in the entire game. Nostalgia sort of blinds me on this one, so I'll play some examples and let you decide for yourselves. Where does one begin with Rambo 3's critique on the Sega Genesis? It's really easy for me to tumble down the rabbit hole of feel-good nostalgia. I could tell you how solid a run and gun it is, and how much fun I had with all those cool-looking boss fights. And every word of that would be true. I had a lot of fun with Rambo 3. It filled that early void of so few games on my new 16-bit platform just fine. It looks okay, sounds okay, and the gameplay is done well enough to warrant a complete playthrough. But I'd be doing you all a great disservice by not judging the game with everything I've learned and felt in the years since. As much fun as I personally had with this title, it most certainly has a number of issues that could adversely affect your time with it. First, the game is damned short. You can beat the first stage in a minute or so, and the content after that is entirely beatable inside an hour, even for the most average player. After a few repeated play sessions and learning the layout of the stages, man, you will blow through this start to finish in 20 minutes. That may not be a bad thing to some of you, but go into this knowing that this is short on content and variety. The presentation is also a tad weak. The 2 megabit cartridge didn't leave much room for impressive visuals and lots of great music. This is a very basic looking adventure and nowhere near the likes of the better stuff on the Genesis, like Revenge of Shinobi. Hell, this likely could have been done on the Master System without much quality loss. You are also not going to get the weapon options like you get in other run and guns. A knife, a bow, and a bomb is about it. And while they get the job done, this really could have used a spread shot, some homing rockets, or maybe a flamethrower for variety. The developers likely wanted to keep things as close as possible to the movie in regards to your arsenal, but many of the better movie games never feared going off script to add a punch to the gameplay. I was also disappointed with the lack of two-player co-op. The alternating mode is fine, but they couldn't scale back an enemy sprite or two and give us co-op? I mean, even the Master System version of Rambo 2 had 2 players together. So the verdict on Rambo 3 falls kinda like this. If you were like me and played it way back when, you probably have some strong memories of many great nights shooting down bad guys and blowing up enemy tanks and helicopters. But if you are coming into Rambo 3 with the hindsight of the entire 16-bit generation, you probably will come away underwhelmed and wanting more. More stages, more weapons, more objectives, more music, and more variety in the visuals. When I got my Sega Genesis and began making my way through the launch software, I was left feeling rather unimpressed. While a handful of games blew me away, it seems I encountered more poor and average games than I would have liked. I thought games like Space Harrier 2 and Super Thunderblade were just terrible representations of their arcade roots, and even when a game was okay like Last Battle or Altered Beast, there didn't seem to be much to the gameplay or the content. That feeling sort of set up a game like Rambo 3 to be a winner at the time. It was a tried and true formula that was the equivalent of comfort food. It may not have been the best you could have gotten, but in the light of the situation, it got the job done and you were left satisfied. But like everything else, Rambo 3 may crumble under a more refined expectation. Those wanting an experience that carries a deep weapon system, various missions within each area, and the replay value to see it all again, almost certainly will come away with mixed feelings. Heck, even at the time, a number of magazine reviews were really mixed on its quality. I'm finding the more I do reviews and the more I hear your opinions, the more I realize when and where you played these games truly does make all the difference in the world in cases. And if you played Rambo 3 when the Genesis was brand new on the console market, you are gonna look at it with completely different eyes than someone playing it for the first time today. That doesn't mean you can't enjoy it as a newcomer just discovering it. It just means you need to set your expectations to a realistic level and understand this was a launch window title without the complexity of later hits in a well-established genre. I'm Sega Lord X. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.